Hello. Let's talk about Chapter 14, Facilitating Self-Care, Adaptive and Independent Skills. So this is all about helping kids learn to take care of themselves. Functional skills are skills that if a child cannot perform, someone does for them. Adaptive behaviors are determined by culture, but include eating, dressing, and toileting. And self determination means people with disabilities are taking an active role in making choices about their own life. Adaptive behaviors we'll talk about because whenever we talk about doing things in a developmentally appropriate way, that includes working with children with special needs. And it includes the idea that some cultures value behaviors more than others. So some cultures in young children prefer to have more of a focus on nurturing and doing things for children at ages that um, we might consider too old. So, for instance, I've talked about this before. If you had a class with me, I was always interested. I had friends who were from Mediterranean countries whose parents and they also fed their children, like physically fed their children well into preschool. And that was not because they didn't think their children could do it, it was a way of nurturing their children. So when we talk about IFSPs and family priorities, a child learning how to feed himself may not be the priority in some families that it would be in others. Makes sense? Another one, you've seen this probably, is children being carried. Like a lot of families are, once you can walk on your own, you need to walk on your own. And there are cultures where it's important that, children be carried because it's a sign of nurturing. So you need to figure out when you're working with children with special needs, what are the behaviors that are priorities for the parents and the family that may be different from your priorities. So, self care skills are taught so that children can be independent because we want people to be able to take care of themselves, right? And like I said, culture impacts when these skills are taught, but they should be taught naturally throughout the day. So, you shouldn't be spending your time, okay, now it's potty training time. Let's go sit on the potty. You know, it should be when it needs to happen. Same thing, you don't sit somebody down and try to teach them how to use a knife and a fork um, when it's not a mealtime. Kids need to understand the context with which to use these skills, so you need to do them when they need to be done, right? So, what you want to look at is what each child is capable of, and then you're going to think about what, where do we need to go with this? And you want to look at when they're in familiar environments. So, they may not function the same way in a place that they don't know what to do, right? So in a new place, in a new restaurant, in a new school, they're functioning maybe a little bit different from what they do at school, a school that or classroom that they've been in for a long time, or at home. It's hard, sometimes you get to a place where you don't know exactly how to behave. And if you already have had to learn the process in a different way than other people have, you kind of have to learn it again in a new situation. Okay, so we are talking about embedding self care learning. So we can do things as we teach these skills to help learn other things, right? So, eating is a great place to talk about counting, to talk about vocabulary, number, textures, and colors, and stuff like that. And then you should be talking all of the time that you're doing these working on these skills with children, right? Talking about why we're doing this, how do we do this? Okay. Um, Obviously, you want children to be able to get to a point where they can do these self care skills on their own independently. And it takes practice, right? And then what you want to do is make sure that you're building in opportunities for them to be successful, right? You're not just sitting them down and saying, here's a fork, we're going to learn how to use it, and then it's not going to work, right? You want to make sure that along the way, there are times when they're absolutely going to have success because that will make them want to continue to try. Okay. We've talked about this before. One of your discussion questions was about how much should you be involved. You want to let kids try stuff, and they are going to fail, but encourage them to try and reward. This says reward the success, but also reward the trying. Make sure that they know that you know how hard they are working, right? And you just need to figure out with each kid when to step in and how to help. You want to be the least intrusive you can, right? Help without it looking like you're helping. That is important for two reasons. It's important so that the child feels successful, and it's important for their perception of how they relate to the rest of their peers. So if they feel like you're helping them all the time and you're not helping their peers, that's going to impact how they feel about their successes, right? Another thing is sometimes kids will sort of feign um, inability for help, for attention. So you need to, that kid who, oh, I can't zip up my coat, I can't zip up my coat. And your response needs to be what? Uh, you try it first and then I'll help you. So kids that you can tell aren't looking for actual assistance, they're just looking for attention. Give them the attention, but also encourage them to do the skill. Okay. We've talked about visual cues and supports can increase independence. If you see a chart of all the steps you need to take, it's going to be easier for you to do it. And then sometimes you just have to step in a little bit more. Sometimes it's just not working. And it's good at that point to say, can I offer you some help? Do you need some help with that? Would you like me to try to help you with that instead of just going in and taking over, right? The most important thing is that kids feel like they have the space to try the things that they need to do. Making it fun is always a way to keep everybody interested, right? So, how can you make it fun? How can you make toilet training fun? How can you make learning to use a fork and spoon fun? What are ways that you can keep kids engaged? So, it's always more fun for you too if it's more fun for them. Okay. All right. And then you need to set goals. So where do you want this child to be? Can you break it up into small steps so that you can teach it in small steps? And then what can you do to remind them, to give them cues about what's happening? And then how can you step out so that the child is doing it on their own? Um, Obviously, it's important to track progress to show, oh, on this day, he was able to sit in the chair by himself for 10 minutes. And then the next day, we were able to do it longer. And then, as always, you need to be thinking of how you work with the child, right? And then working with the child and evaluating what's happening as you do it. And then going back and saying, what worked, what didn't work, how can I do it differently? And you should be doing that with all your kids all the time. But specifically with kids who have special needs, you want to make sure that you are coming up with the best approach for that individual child, that you are using that approach, seeing what works, reflecting on it, and then trying again a different way or continuing to do it that way. And then what will happen is as they grasp that skill, as they master it, then you can move on to something else. And sometimes, even when a child has achieved mastery, you will need to go back and review and remind and re-cue because something happened or something is going on in the classroom to distract them, right? Just because they've done it once doesn't mean they're going to have it forever. And it's important to keep encouraging, supporting, and reminding them. Okay, snack time. I love snack time. Snack time is a great time to teach all kinds of things, right? So you are teaching how to feed yourself, right? You're teaching about numbers and, like I said before, textures and tastes and those vocabulary words. It's a great time when you have sort of one-on-one time to sit and chat with a child. Snack time's a great time to learn. Toilet training. As many different children as there are as many different ways as there are to teach toilet training, right? Probably if you have ever potty trained a kid or 2, you know that every child has a different way of figuring it out, and every child kinda does it when they feel like they're ready to do it. So, helping them, reminding them what the steps are, um, and making it as easy as possible for them. And that's it. That was chapter 14. See ya.